Hey there. So today we're going to hop in and we're going to look at some jobs that we've done on site for a couple of the restaurants that we've installed.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I am our field support specialist here at F3 IT. So I will go around and kind of handle our Chicago market, going on site for them, and also I will remotely assist with some project management for implementation that we have come our way from customers that would like to use us for our services.
Yes, so my name is Xzavier. I am a field implementation technician. So I go around, I install our POS systems, I train the staff, and then also for go live support. So any type of support that the restaurant needs throughout their newly installed POS, I help out with that. Configure everything to whatever it is that they want their POS to do for them, and just help out around the day.
At F3 Technologies, we help the restaurant not only with their point of sale implementation, but we also have our own networking equipment as well that we can put to help manage their internal networks.
All right. So sometimes when we go on site, we're hoping that everything's plug and play. We're hoping that we are going in and it's going to be straightforward for networking. So on this particular job, we went in, I asked the point of contact that was on site. Also, this was also a 5 a.m. install. So I'm asking them, hey, where's your networking? And sometimes there's also a language barrier that we encounter on site as well. So it was very interesting to try to get into the office. And specifically in this office, it was off to the corner. There was a cabinet right in front of it, and no one knew where the networking was because it was hidden. So ended up looking all around, moved the cabinet, and it was also a panel that I had to essentially pry off to get to all of the Ethernet cables. So once I took that out, it was a switch daisy chain to a switch daisy chain to another switch, 50 million switches, and also having to trace about 15 lines because it was a pretty big install. And also trying to figure out, like, they had also lines that were not terminated that were just hanging there. It looked crazy. It looked really crazy. So ended up installing our router, the Pronto router, wasn't getting any data connected to it. So now I have to search through a bazillion different Ethernet cables to see where they're going up in the wall and then where they're coming out to try to figure out which one is actually connected to the modem. And so at that point, I then had to talk to the point of contact again to try to figure out where their modem was located. Come to find out, the modem was never installed because they had just gotten a new internet provider. So I had to hook up the modem with the coaxial, the whole thing that was supposed to be done, and just trying to make sure that, one, their internet was actually connected just for the entire restaurant itself, and then also that there was a dedicated line for our Pronto modem. Then after that, installed everything and had to go back for actually making it pretty.
Yep. Yeah, I know I've been on site a few times as well where the person who's the point of contact and meeting you on site may not be the person that knows their way around the networking situation or where that is. So that's definitely been a challenge that I've experienced on site as well, is having to go through and use the first portion of your install to actually just trace, okay, where is their networking equipment? Where do all these cables go? And sometimes they have a lot of other equipment that's kind of looped together. So you have to figure out what should be connected, what shouldn't be. And the goal is to, as we'll see later on, to get it so it's nice and neat. So that way we can separate both of those sides out to make sure that we have the point of sale separated, neatly labeled, all of that. So that way that helps with troubleshooting in the future as well, if they need to add any new equipment or troubleshoot connection issues with their current equipment. And then that way we can be sure that all of that data is on its own connection and secure from all of their internal networks as well.
All right, so now we're looking at the after image. After everything has been installed, everything has been cable managed and everything like that. The biggest thing was making all of the Ethernet lines that have been ran for the stations and the kitchen printers, that they fit back neatly in the cabinet so I could put the panel back on the wall. And then for the longest, because we were also in the middle of dinner service, and so at the end of the appointment, I said, "Hey, where's the panel for the wall?" Because somebody had moved it. So we had been in and out of the office all day, making changes on the POS, making sure everything was configured correctly, to the point where at one point in time, there was at least maybe 6 people in maybe a small, like 5x5 closet type of area. And I, for the life of me, did not know where the panel went. So I had to run and search, because I was determined to make sure that before I left, that it looked okay. If anything ever happened, they knew exactly what line went to what. They knew how to troubleshoot if they ever ran into any issues with their internet service provider, and things like that. And it took a good 15 minutes for me to find that panel. And then I finally found the panel, put it up there, and then I also mounted the switch and the Pronto, of course, right next to each other, labeled which was which, so that way, again, they wouldn't have any issues if they ever had any problems with their ISP finding lines.
Yeah, I like the way you did that too. It looks nice and neat. It's separated, so you know that this is what the Toast point of sale stuff is, and then all their internal equipment is separated, so there's no risk of them getting confused on which is which. And yeah, as you mentioned, that is a part of the potential issue of these networks that we're running into, is the install then runs a little long, and you're having to trace cables and plug things in as they start opening. But yeah, it looks nice and neat. Got those cables tucked back in there behind that panel, and it definitely looks way more organized than it did before when you got there. And yeah, as you said, that's what we try to do, is we get in there and make sure that we leave things better than we found it. So that way it helps, because when you're running a restaurant, especially if there is troubleshooting, you don't have a lot of time to be able to troubleshoot that networking, because you're worried about getting food out to tables, making guests happy. And so keeping it like this, where we have everything nice and neatly labeled so they can tell what everything is, and keeping it segmented from their other equipment, that helps in the future for when they do have these issues, and we can help troubleshoot them further.
All right, Matt, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at a job that you've done.
Yeah, so this one is a restaurant that we were looking into, not only doing point of sale support for them, but they were also interested in using our networking equipment to help manage their network for their point of sale and also some of their internal devices. And this was the picture that we got when we went out for a site inspection. And you can see they really didn't have a network rack. They have a patch panel up there towards the top of the wall, but then all those cables were just kind of running down and intermingling with their AT&T modem, Comcast modem, different phone wires. And so it was a bit of a mess when we get on there trying to figure out what is what, and also very precariously placed just kind of on top of that electrical box, which isn't the best, because you can have things fall off very easily, and then you lose connection to your entire kitchen or your point of sale systems, and you're unable to put those orders through. So part of what we were trying to figure out with them is, where do we want to move this to make this a more feasible solution, so that way it's more secure on a shelf somewhere, and also to give them a little bit more room to work. Because as you can see kind of on the bottom left of this first image, they have a shelf there that was blocking a door. And so part of what was an issue for them is they were unable to use that door to quickly get in and out to help, run supplies through to the kitchen, to the restaurant. And so part of this install was, how do we make it so that they can now use that doorway to help their restaurant, so they're not having to take the extra long way around to get supplies or people back into the restaurant.
Wow. That's, for it to be blocking the door, that's some work. That's some work to be put in. I can't even, the amount of times that I've seen, like, just different boxes are just on top of the shelf. And just, the way that I can't even imagine how they work their day to day. And then it's crazy also, when they'll come in and they'll just be like, oh, well, someone else came in, they installed this 15 years ago, and we haven't touched it since.
Yes, I definitely see that a lot too, where they're worried about running their restaurant And as long as what gets put in place works, that's good with them. But yeah, it is where these things just start stacking on top of each other, where someone just comes in and adds their stuff to this shelf, they add their stuff on top of this electrical box, and then it just keeps piling on top of each other. And then you end up in a situation where it's gets a little bit messy towards the end.
Yeah. But I will say sometimes these are some of my favorite installs, because it's like Tetris almost.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's like trying to untangle these. Where does this go? Where does that go? And it makes my brain go off, and I actually like it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good challenge, and it's nice when you can get in earlier before the restaurant opens, so that way you're able to unplug the cables if you need to and kind of reroute them to make them work, and you're not worried about unplugging like a point of sale device while they're in the middle of service.
Exactly.
Yep. And so now looking at to the after photo, you can now see that shelf in front of that doorway has been removed, and we put our networking equipment on that shelf that's to the left of that door. And so part of this was they did have that patch panel on that wall to the right that was above where the previous equipment was. And then there were also some new cables that were ran that are coming out of that ceiling. But they did not have a patch panel that those cables were terminated to. So what we did was there were a lot of the cables were able to reach over. I used a new patch cable, like a 7-footer, that would be able to run from that patch cable over across into the switch to make that work. But there were a couple of points, as you can see there, that was just a direct line going to whatever that device wasn't going to the patch panel there. So I couldn't just swap out a new patch cable. So I'd use an RJ45 coupler in order to add another cable onto that to continue it and route it over to that switch. So that was part of that, as well as obviously needing to keep the cables managed and as neat and tidy as we could. Obviously, as I said, having a patch panel close to the switch would be ideal. But without that, once I got the cables all connected and tested out to the switch, I wanted to make sure that I kept that doorway clear for them. So I used some zip ties to be able to wrap those cables up and coil them up together to still make it look as neat as I could without blocking that doorway. And then they did have a few extra cables, those white and green cables that they weren't using just yet, but they were there for extra equipment should that be needed in the future. So I just made sure to also kind of separate those out to make it easier to just unclip just those cables and then plug them into that switch if they needed those in the future.
Yeah. Couplers will definitely be lifesavers.
Yes.
I've used so many different boxes of couplers just to make the right cable management look, or just there's a wall port that is 15 feet away, and then there's nothing else ran to that terminal. So yeah, that looks really nice, especially rolling up the Ethernet cables just to go up through the ceiling, for sure. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and then the handy dandy zip ties with the little screw hole that you can just screw it right into the wall.
Yes.
Those are very helpful because I was able to coil them up and make sure that they would stay above that door. And that way, even when I was still kind of doing some cable management, we had employees like coming in and out of that door. So it was nice to see that they were actually able now open up that space and make their restaurant more efficient with that availability now.
For sure. And I was just introduced to those types of zip ties as well. Lifesavers, because before I would use a zip tie and then like a double-sided Velcro tape just to keep it on the wall.
Yep.
But once I was introduced to those on site, I was like, yeah, I have to.
Yeah, I did use that before as well. You have the double-sided Velcro tape. What I like using too, if it's a single cable, you can get some of those just individual wall clips that stick to the wall to help route like maybe one or two cables. But yeah, those zip ties that have the drill hole where you can drill it right into the wall and keep it secure are definitely a big lifesaver and help situations like this where you have this big pile of cable that you have to get out of the way. And that definitely helps so we can free up that door for them to be able to use that. All right. Thank everybody for watching out there. Thank you, Xzavier, for joining me for this. I hope everybody watching, it was informative and a little educational as far as how we perform our jobs and some of the issues that we face or hurdles that we have to overcome in order to get our networks for our customers looking nice, neat, and tidy so that way they can perform their restaurant duties nice and efficiently. So subscribe if you like this content. If you want to see more, we'll be putting out more videos like this and more videos from our techs on site as well, actually performing the jobs. And if you would like any more info about F3 IT and what we do, you can reach out to info@f3tech.com for more information there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.